I've never played a Bloodrayne game before, and my uneducated impression of the series was of a vampire killing Nazis. So when the title screen of Bloodrayne Betrayal shows off something that looks a little more anime, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I sure am glad of what I got. It's a simplified 2D version of Devil May Cry, but with an aesthetic closer to Castlevania, and a great soundtrack of haunting piano melodies. This game is awesome. The story is really simple, and takes a backseat to the rest of the game. The titular character, Rayne, is called upon by some nondescript futuristic military force to track down a hidden castle filled with evil vampires. An underground hidden castle. I'm glad that the story rarely interrupts the gameplay, but the text is very small and difficult to read, especially when my focus is elsewhere. Some voice acting or better text positioning would have certainly helped. This isn't a big deal though, and the plot can be easily ignored. Gameplay frequently shifts between combat and platforming, with the two occasionally intersecting, and the finer controls of both aspects take a fair bit of getting used to despite being so simple. Attacks are comprised almost entirely of the square button. Depending on the context, like whether square is pressed rapidly or in conjunction with the directional buttons, different attacks can be utilized. The R1 button is Rayne's Magnum, which acts as a safety net of sorts. It deals massive damage, fires quickly, and blasts through every target in a row. However, it is limited by ammunition, which is occasionally dropped by enemies. Ammo never became a big issue for me though, and I was able to use the Magnum whenever I felt overwhelmed, which felt like a bit of a cheap cop-out. Rayne's only defensive maneuver is a dash, for which she is invulnerable in its duration. Enemies provide short but clear gestures to clue you into their attacks, which can be easily dodged through. Should Rayne receive damage, a combo can be quickly cancelled into a grab in order to suck the enemy's blood and kill them easily, while healing Rayne in the process. It's not the most efficient way to kill an enemy, and not all enemies can be grabbed either, but it can be occasionally utilized as a safeguard. Rayne can also simply bite an enemy without sucking their blood, which infects them, and an infected enemy can later be detonated. It's a powerful attack, but one that requires some setup and isn't easy to pull off safely. What I love about the combat isn't just a variety of attacks, but also how they all meld together. Even though mashing square is the go-to combo, the other moves are required whenever the situation demands for it, and it works out surprisingly well. It can take a bit of getting used to, and Rayne's jumping speed feels really floaty and slow compared to the rest of the action on screen. And speaking of the action on screen, the frame rate takes a hit when there's a bit too much going on at once. But honestly, these are minor quirks when the big picture is taken into account. Platforming takes just as significant of a role as combat, with many tricky obstacles to get through. Dashing is necessary to use as a long jump, and there's a wall climbing mechanic similar to Mega Man X for those vertical sections. Although the platforming here can be quite tough, checkpoints are very frequent, and the player is quickly offered another opportunity after death. There is no downtime here. Occasionally, a really cheap obstacle will get in your way, but it's never so bad that it's overly frustrating. Later in the game, segments where the player controls a raven are introduced. These are equivalent to the water levels from Super Mario Bros. And actually control in a very similar manner. These segments are okay, but I feel as though they needlessly detract from the real meat of the game. It probably only takes up about 20% of the game though, and I can't really blame the designers for wanting to add a little more variety, so it's not so bad overall. Something that really irks me is the lack of any grace period between receiving damage. It's very easy to get knocked down, get back up again, and then immediately knocked down again. It's possible to press the jump button just as you fall to quickly get back up, but that doesn't mean much if another enemy is in the middle of winding up their own attack. If you're playing well, then Rain should never get hit in the first place. And either way, a large pool of health is granted to the player, so these goofy situations rarely lead to a loss. In fact, the only real dangers here are when battles go on for a particularly long time with a ridiculous amount of enemy reinforcements joining the fray, or when difficult or unclear platforming leads to an instant death, or when graphic elements purposely make the action difficult to see. That last one is particularly annoying to me. Donkey Kong Country Returns did something similar, but it never blinded the player, certainly not this badly. But for the vast majority of the game, it's awesome. The anime art style didn't quite seem appropriate to me at first, but I quickly got used to it, and the smooth animation is exemplary of WayForward Technologies, well known for their work on the Shantae franchise, and I'd say that Bloodrayne Betrayal is well deserved to be known as one of their better games. Also, as is typical of WayForward, Bloodrayne Betrayal is extremely short. I breezed through this game in just under 3.5 hours, and that includes my many deaths and retries. There's also not a whole lot of additional content besides a level select, trying to look for secrets, and achieving a higher score, which I normally wouldn't care for, but this game is short and with enough variety to make score hunting a fun prospect. Because of all this, I find the $10 price point to be perfectly fair, even considering how short it is. There are flaws, yes, but they're almost completely eclipsed by the game's overall outstanding execution. If you want an adrenaline rush action game with minimal filler that's easy to pick up and hard to put down, then you owe it to yourself to get Bloodrayne Betrayal. Thank you for watching my review of Bloodrayne Betrayal. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe.